Good morning. This is Dr. Earl with your weekly update for COVID-19. Always interesting things happening, and there's a lot to cover today. A lot of research that's been out that you may or may not have heard of, and I really, again, want to try to make some common sense of all the things that are going on. So a lot of research that's out there, and so with that, again, let's jump in and see what we've got. So first, there's a brand new research out where they're combining chloroquine, hydrochloroquine with Z-Pak. So again, either one of those, and they're combining that with Z-Pak to see if it works. Again, the challenge with a lot of these studies that are saying this does or doesn't work is the fact that they are failing to add in some of the zinc and some of the other components. The research that showed the initial benefit and really had the statistically valid results out of Italy and out of Spain and so forth really was a combination of the chloroquine, Z-Pak, and zinc in a very prescribed dose. And so when they do these studies that look at the individual components, they're not going to work. Again, we've talked earlier about what's called reductionary science, reductionary research, where they try to reduce it down to this simple process, but in reality what they end up doing is creating a two-dimensional study that does not correlate to us as three-dimensional beings. So if you see a lot of research out that disproves chloroquine and hydrochloroquine, take a second look and make sure that they've included all of the pieces in that research. If they haven't, then the reality is it's not a valid study. So that's ongoing, and we'll see how those results come forward in the next little bit. I also came across a new study where they are studying famotidine, that's Pepcid, in very large doses. This is a histamine 2 or an H2 blocker. It's most commonly used for heartburn. Often in the emergency department, we would use it for allergies as well because it worked really, really well and was quite successful in helping abate these emergent allergy symptoms. Well, now they're saying that Pepcid and or famotidine in very large doses. So again, these are people that are receiving very large doses, most likely IV. It may block the virus's ability to replicate within the cell. That could be exciting for hospitalized patients. It is still too early to tell in the data collection whether this will be something that is going to be useful. Now, again, not suggesting that you go out and buy a ton of Pepcid. When you see these type of studies, make sure you do a little extra background and see what they're using dose-wise and if it's something that's applicable to you. This particular study has to do with IV, and so if you see something that's out there that promotes famotidine or Pepcid as being protective, be a little cautious. They also had a study that noted that that blood type A had a slightly increased risk for coming down and being susceptible to COVID. They noted that males had an increased risk. In fact, right now in New York, 60% of the patients are actually male, at least hospitalized patients. And then finally, they noted that ibuprofen use increased the severity of disease. Now, the reason that this is a player, the reason that this is even in the discussion points, is the fact that ibuprofen will alter a little bit of something called your glycocalyx. The glycocalyx is a combination of sugars and proteins that coat your cells. All of your cells have a little bit of a glycocalyx. And ibuprofen blocks that. It blocks its formation, or at least inhibits its formation. This is a large reason why ibuprofen actually increases your risk of stomach irritation otherwise, because it blocks or decreases the amount of glycocalyx, or protective slime is the other word for it, that your stomachs produce. And that's a big reason why that happens. Well, this glycocalyx is also protective against a virus being able to get in and get next to the cell and then enact its issues, or enact its infection. So that's why ibuprofen is a bit of a risk for this. It actually inhibits the glycocalyx. Studies from China, Italy, and Spain focused on smoking, pollution exposure, and obviously they had a significant increased risk for having severe disease with COVID. Of interest is a patient that has some smoke exposure, if you will, and a little bit of irritation. They're still sorting out whether the smoke exposure can actually harden the respiratory tract and give a little bit of protection, which I think is very interesting. But in general, anything that irritates the respiratory tract is going to really increase your risk of coming down with this infection. And that again, with all the other coronaviruses, that's ferreted out, and I think that will ferret out as well. And advanced age, we've known that advanced age is a risk factor for COVID-19. This primarily has to do with immunity and immune function. So as we sneak ever so slightly away from the teenage years, how's that for politically correct? The reality is our immune systems may not be as robust as they were when we were younger, and so that can obviously play a role, and has. Advanced age, I think if you look at some of the statistics, you'll find that in many countries the average age was 56 or above, some 63 or above, and so it just depends upon your health status as you age. What does that mean? It means that if you're advanced in age, you need to self-isolate and be a little more vigilant as far as protecting yourself from coming down with the virus. It also means that you really need to do everything you can to bolster your immune system so that if and when you come in contact with this virus, you're able to fight it off. Okay, one last really awesome study that I want to talk about today is an American Medical Association study. And what they did is they looked at 5,700 New York City hospitalized patients. And what they found was that there were three main risk factors for these hospitalized patients. So hospitalized patients means they're the sick of the sick. These are patients that really were ill and needed to be hospitalized for COVID. Understand that with a lot of these patients, if you've got minor symptoms or otherwise, they're sending you home. So, excuse me. So the reality is this study is very pivotal as far as who really gets sick from COVID-19. And they had three main risk factors for becoming very ill with COVID-19. The first, interestingly enough, was hypertension. I'm getting a little dyslexic in my numbers. Here we go. 56% of patients that had severe illness and needed hospitalization for COVID-19 had hypertension. 41.7% had obesity, and 30.7% had diabetes. Now, for all you amateur mathematicians and even you professional mathematicians out there, you'll quickly realize, hey, that's more than 100%. You're exactly right. The reality is, again, a lot of patients had many of these comorbid diseases, but it's interesting that these, especially in the United States, were the primary risk factors for COVID-19. At the summary of this study, really they focused on the fact that 97% of hospitalized patients had at least one, and many had most of these comorbid diseases. So diabetes, obesity, and hypertension, those are your big players as far as things that increase your risk for coming down and becoming sick with COVID-19. Very interesting study, very instrumental study. Hopefully what that means is that we'll get some common sense behind that study and realize that there are a subset of patients that are at risk for this, and the rest can get back to work and get back to life and do what we need to do in order to get both the economy and also our emotional health and social health back moving forward. That's a very real issue right now, is social and emotional health. What's really sad is I think the emotional toll that's being enacted by the fear and the social isolation that's happening, I think the toll may actually be worse in the long run. And I know that's saying a lot because we've had greater than 50,000 deaths here in the United States, and certainly my heart goes out to those families and so forth. But we may have a greater toll from an emotional standpoint and a social standpoint, and certainly the economy is going to pay a bitter price for what we've done. I don't know that there was a way around that based on the structure of everything, but the reality is we're going to have to also address that head on. I recently heard from a professional mental health practitioner that she said that suicide and suicide attempts are way up. Depression and anxiety is extremely high right now. And again, she was fearful that the death and the consequences from the social effects will outweigh, social and emotional effects will outweigh the death from the virus. Unfortunately, with that, only time will tell. But with that, I invite you, those of us that are listening to this, to take the opportunity to reach out to family, to friends, to take this opportunity. We've got time. We seem to have an opportunity to reach out with technology, with telephone, and just let someone know that you care. If you find that you're someone that has depression, anxiety, and you're starting to have some overwhelming thoughts, get in contact with someone. Reach out. Don't fight this alone. The reality is you don't have to. There's a lot of people at home who care about you and have the time to talk and really help you get through this. And then then ultimately, I think we really need to take the time to unplug. Take some time throughout your day to really unplug, get into a good book, get into something that just consumes your mind, consumes your emotions, and really helps you move forward and beyond a lot of the consequences from a social, emotional, and economic standpoint. So the reality is, together, we're going to do well. We're going to get through this. We just need to weather this initial storm. Okay? Now, one other thing to talk about, well, I should say a few other things to talk about. The first I want to address is that many of the other pandemics that we've looked at and studied over time, they've had a first, second, and even a third wave of these infections. And we need to start to think about the fact that that may be the case as well. They're already starting to have some initial warnings about what may happen this fall with COVID. And the advantage that we'll have is there will be many of us that already have been exposed and have built up an immunity. So the hope is that the second spike is not quite so high. Based on several other pandemics, that was the case in some and wasn't the case in others. And so, unfortunately, what we'll have to do is wait and see. So what does that, again, mean to you, and what can you do? Well, many of us think about the vaccines, and they're pushing for vaccines and vaccinations. The reality is vaccines still work by activating our immune system. Your immune system, my immune system, grandma's immune system. That's how they still work. And so they're really only as protective, as amazing as our immune systems are. If our immune system is still broken, not working correctly, and otherwise is not able to mount a sufficient response even to the vaccine, then it's not going to have much benefit from us, or at least not as much as it can or should. The other big key to keep in mind is these viruses often mutate. Mutation means that they pick up new capabilities, or they pick up parts from other viruses. And that mutation may make it so that it does not respond, or the body doesn't respond to the vaccine. And that mutation makes it so that it acts basically like a brand new virus, a brand new exposure. So with that in mind, again, I think we need to be smart. We need to be wise is what we do moving forward. And I would say the first thing to do, the first thing to take into consideration is get your health in order. You need to get your health in order now. The COVID seems to be flattening. That's great. The reality is the exposure risk is still there. So get yourself healthy, get your health on right now, and get after it. If you have hypertension, diabetes, and obesity, really, in my opinion, these diseases are not to be managed. We know that they can be reversed, that they can actually turn around and become more healthy. The reality is part of the challenge with a lot of the medical dogma that's out there is we're looking to manage the symptoms and manage the disease. Well, these three diseases in particular need to not be managed. We need to stop managing these diseases. We need to reset them. We need to restore our health especially in these three areas with the risks that are out there, and get on top of them. I think managing disease is the wrong way to approach this, and really we need to attack our health in a very positive way, and we can do that. So start considering that. Optimize your immune system. Really take the things that we've talked about in some of the previous videos. If you haven't seen those, check out down below, subscribe, and click the links and check out some of those other videos where we talk about how to maximize your immune systems and some things that you can do to really help and protect yourself. One other thing that I will just suggest as I close this is connect with nature. I had an amazing opportunity to over the weekend to be out and to do some work in the yard, to work on a few things that we needed around the house. But then took a wonderful opportunity to be out in nature. I took some hikes and had the opportunity to be with my family, my sons, and others, and connected with nature. No, we weren't in big groups, so still safe there. But it was amazing, and it was just rejuvenating. So my challenge to you this week is connect with nature, even if it's just in your backyard. But however you can, get connected with nature. Help your immune system, help your soul, help your body in a very powerful way. Okay, I hope this helps. If you find this helpful, please please share. Feel free to share this with your family, with your friends, and we'll keep moving forward, and we will talk soon. Thanks.